$350 million, just sitting there in the darkness, for over 70 years. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. This wasn't just any gold. This was Nazi gold, stolen treasure that vanished at the end of World War II, buried beneath the frozen Canadian wilderness by SS officers who thought their secret would die with them. They were dead wrong. The guy who found this mind-blowing fortune? Kevin Beets. Yeah, that Kevin Beets, Tony Beets' son from Gold Rush. But this discovery is about to make everything you thought you knew about the Klondike look like pocket change. Because when Kevin cracked open that rusted steel door deep in the Yukon wilderness, he didn't just find gold. He found the biggest Nazi treasure vault ever discovered in North America. And the story of how it got there? That's where things get absolutely insane. Picture this. Kevin's cleaning out his dead grandfather's cabin. Just routine family stuff, right? Wrong. Hidden behind a loose floorboard, he finds a metal box that his grandfather Wilhelm had sealed away for 30 years. Inside that box, immigration papers, some old photos, and then, boom, a leather journal with a hand-drawn map that made Kevin's blood run cold. This wasn't just any map. This thing showed a complex underground tunnel system carved deep into Paradise Hill, a mining site that, according to every official record, had been completely tapped out in the 1940s. But here's where it gets crazy. At the bottom of that map, in his grandfather's shaky handwriting, "They made me help dig it. God forgive me for what we buried there." What the hell did that mean? Kevin spent weeks researching Paradise Hill before he made his move, and what he found made zero sense. The mining company that worked the site? Northern Territories Extraction. Limited sounds legit, right? Wrong again. This company appeared in government records in 1942, operated for exactly 3 years, then vanished without a trace in 1945. No ownership records, no financial backing, no explanation for why they just disappeared. Even weirder, the geological surveys didn't match the terrain. Official reports claimed Paradise Hill was mostly shallow soil over bedrock, totally unsuitable for deep mining. But Wilhelm's notes described massive underground chambers and cavern systems perfect for extensive tunnels. Someone had filed completely fake geological reports. Someone with serious connections had deliberately hidden the truth about Paradise Hill. But why? Kevin packed his gear in October 2024 and headed to Paradise Hill with his grandfather's mysterious map. The place was exactly as remote and forbidding as you'd expect. Thick forest, brutal terrain, decades of Yukon winters erasing any trace of human activity. But Kevin brought ground-penetrating radar, and that radar immediately started going absolutely crazy. There were definitely artificial chambers carved into the bedrock, exactly where Wilhelm's map said they'd be. Massive chambers, way bigger than anything that made sense for gold mining. Kevin followed the map to a spot marked with an X. 6 feet down, his shovel hit metal with a sound that echoed through the forest like a gunshot. It was a steel access door, heavily rusted but intact. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just locked. It had been welded shut from the inside using industrial equipment. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure whatever was down there would never see daylight again. Kevin faced a choice: walk away from what might be the discovery of a lifetime, or cut through that seal and find out what his grandfather had been so desperate to hide. The cutting took 3 days. Industrial plasma torches working in shifts to avoid attracting attention. And when that door finally swung open, Kevin found himself staring into a perfectly preserved tunnel system that stretched into the darkness like the throat of some prehistoric beast. The air that rushed out carried the smell of machine oil and something else, something metallic and cold that made Kevin's skin crawl. This wasn't the rough work of desperate prospectors. The walls were carved with surgical precision. Steel supports showed no corrosion after decades underground. Electric conduits ran along the ceiling, suggesting this place had been fully powered. This was military-grade engineering, professional, calculated, built to last forever. But as Kevin ventured deeper into the tunnel system, following his grandfather's map through intersecting passages that seemed to go on forever, he began to understand why Wilhelm had spent 40 years haunted by nightmares. Because 50 feet underground, Kevin found something that made him question everything he thought he knew about his family. The first chamber was the size of a warehouse, carved directly from solid bedrock and reinforced with steel beams that still bore German manufacturing stamps from World War II. Stacked along the walls in perfect methodical rows were gold bars. Thousands of them, each one weighing 25 pounds, each one stamped with Nazi insignia. Kevin stood there with his headlamp cutting through 70 years of darkness, trying to process what he was seeing. This wasn't just a treasure hoard. This was a vault, a secret repository where fleeing Nazi officers had hidden stolen wealth at the end of the war. But this was only the beginning. Wilhelm's map showed 7 more storage chambers, and what Kevin found in those chambers made the gold bars look like pocket change. Chamber 2, stolen artwork that Kevin recognized from his research into Nazi-looted treasures. Paintings ripped from Jewish homes, sculptures stolen from European museums, cultural treasures representing centuries of heritage. Chamber 3, personal effects sorted with Nazi efficiency, jewelry, watches, silverware, items clearly taken from individual families before they were murdered in concentration camps. But Chamber 4, that's where Kevin found the documents that revealed the true scope of what his grandfather had helped create. Hidden in waterproof containers were files detailing the Canadian end of the Nazi gold operation. And what Kevin read there was more shocking than all the treasure combined. This operation hadn't been carried out by desperate refugees acting alone. It had been a coordinated conspiracy involving high-ranking Canadian government officials, major mining industry figures, and a network of Nazi sympathizers who had successfully infiltrated Canadian institutions. The files included correspondence between Nazi officials and Canadian cabinet ministers, mining permits issued under false names, payment records showing regular bribes to government officials from 1945 through 1953. The bribes had continued for 8 years after the war ended. Swiss bank accounts funding Canadian officials to keep the secret buried. The final payment was dated September 15, 1953, the exact day Wilhelm had drawn his secret map. Kevin realized his grandfather hadn't been the only one struggling with guilt. By 1953, the Canadian collaborators wanted out. That final payment wasn't a bribe, it was severance money, cutting loose conspirators who had become liabilities. That's when they sealed the tunnels, welded the door shut, buried the evidence literally and figuratively. But Wilhelm Beets had refused to let the secret die. His map was insurance, a guarantee that someday, somehow, justice would be served. Standing in those underground chambers, surrounded by evidence of systematic theft on an unimaginable scale, Kevin faced the most difficult decision of his life. The treasure was worth an estimated $350 million, enough to transform the Beets mining empire into one of the wealthiest operations in Canada. No one else knew about the location. Kevin could have concealed his discovery, gradually moved the gold to legitimate markets, and become one of the richest men in North America. But Kevin also knew the truth about where this wealth had come from. In the final storage chamber, he found personal letters and photographs that had been kept with the stolen treasure. Family photos, children's drawings, love letters, personal mementos taken from Jewish families before they were shipped to death camps. Reading through these intimate documents, Kevin felt the crushing weight of human suffering that this treasure represented. These weren't just valuable objects. They were the remnants of destroyed lives, the last traces of families erased from history. The decision was made in that moment. The gold would be returned. The artwork would go back to museums. The personal effects would be donated to Holocaust memorial organizations. And the documentation proving Canadian government complicity? That was going public, regardless of the political consequences. But Kevin knew that revealing this discovery would unleash forces beyond his control. Legal challenges, government investigations, potentially dangerous attention from people who had reasons to keep Nazi secrets buried. Kevin's announcement sent shockwaves through multiple communities simultaneously. Holocaust survivors who had spent decades trying to recover family treasures suddenly had hope. Art historians found themselves with the largest single recovery of Nazi-looted cultural artifacts in history. But the political fallout was immediate and intense. The documentation Kevin found implicated Canadian government officials in a conspiracy that had lasted decades. Some of the officials named in the Nazi correspondence were still alive, now in their 90s, but facing potential prosecution for war crimes. The Canadian government tried to downplay the discovery. They suggested the documents might be forgeries, that the treasure's origins were unclear. But independent experts quickly confirmed everything was authentic. International pressure mounted for full investigation. The UN Human Rights Council demanded hearings. Holocaust organizations called for complete disclosure. Swiss banking authorities began investigating the financial transactions that had sustained the cover-up for decades. Kevin found himself at the center of a historical controversy that extended far beyond treasure hunting. He had exposed one of the longest-running cover-ups in modern history. And there were powerful people who would have preferred some secrets stay buried forever. As news of the Paradise Hill discovery spread, Kevin began hearing from people whose families had been personally affected by the Nazi theft. These weren't abstract victims from history books. They were real people, many still alive, who had spent their entire lives wondering what happened to their family treasures. Sarah Goldstein, 92 years old, Holocaust survivor living in Montreal. Among the recovered paintings was a portrait that had hung in her family's Vienna home before they were deported to Auschwitz in 1943. Sarah was the only family member who survived the war. "I thought I would die without ever seeing my mother's face again," Sarah told Kevin when they met at the Paradise Hill site. "That painting was the last gift my father gave to my mother before the Nazis came." Stories like Sarah's multiplied as news spread. Families across Europe and North America came forward with documentation, proving connections to recovered items. Each reunion was deeply personal: a grandfather's watch, a grandmother's jewelry, religious artifacts representing centuries of tradition. But the impact extended beyond individual families. Museums could finally restore collections that had been incomplete for generations. Synagogues reclaimed religious artifacts, thought lost forever. Communities could reconnect with cultural heritage severed by genocide. Kevin realized his discovery had become about much more than money or historical justice. It was about healing wounds that had festered for 80 years, giving families closure they never expected to find. The Paradise Hill discovery triggered what historians now call the Second Recovery, a worldwide effort to locate Nazi treasure hidden in remote locations during the war's final months. Kevin's success proved that significant caches might still be waiting in places no one had thought to look. Within months, treasure hunters and historians were investigating similar sites across North and South America. Ground-penetrating radar revealed underground anomalies at dozens of locations where Nazi sympathizers might have hidden wealth. Most investigations yielded nothing, but several produced major discoveries. A tunnel system in Argentina containing $80 million in Nazi gold. hidden chambers in Canadian buildings owned by suspected collaborators during the 1940s. Sites mentioned in Kevin's documentation leading to additional recoveries across North America. The discoveries revealed the true scope of Nazi treasure operations. Historians now estimate over $2 billion in stolen wealth was hidden in North America alone, making it one of the largest criminal enterprises in history. But the finds also exposed uncomfortable truths about Nazi collaboration in countries that had officially fought against fascism. Networks of sympathizers had successfully infiltrated government institutions, mining companies, and financial organizations, operating for decades after the war ended. Kevin's decision to return the Paradise Hill treasure, rather than keeping it, created the largest private Holocaust reparations fund in history. But the decision came with personal costs Kevin couldn't have anticipated. The Beets family mining operation faced intense scrutiny as investigators examined whether other claims might be connected to Nazi operations. Kevin endured months of questioning about his grandfather's activities, defending Wilhelm's cooperation with Nazi officials while condemning the conspiracy Wilhelm helped create. Learning that his family's mining fortune was built, at least partially, on knowledge gained from hiding Nazi gold, forced Kevin to reconsider everything about his family's legacy. The grandfather he'd admired as a successful immigrant entrepreneur was revealed as a man carrying tremendous guilt about complicity in historical crimes. But Kevin found meaning in prioritizing justice over profit. Museums around the world restored collections incomplete for generations. Synagogues and cultural organizations reclaimed artifacts thought lost forever. My grandfather spent 40 years trying to figure out how to make amends, Kevin reflected. Maybe this was always the plan. Maybe he left me that map because he knew I would make the right choice. Even after Kevin's discovery and the recovery of hundreds of millions in Nazi treasure, massive questions remain unanswered. Paradise Hill was clearly part of a much larger network, but investigators have only begun uncovering the full scope. Swiss bank accounts that funded the Canadian conspiracy were closed decades ago, but financial records suggest similar payment systems existed in other countries where collaborators needed silencing. How many other government officials were bribed? How many other remote locations hide evidence of Nazi crimes? The Paradise Hill site has become a research focal point. Scientists from universities worldwide study construction techniques, analyze documentation, and use the site as a model for understanding how Nazi wealth concealment operations functioned. But Kevin's discovery has inspired a new generation of treasure hunters and historical investigators who believe significant discoveries are still possible. The Paradise Hill investigation proved that careful research, modern technology, and willingness to question official records can uncover secrets powerful people thought would stay buried forever. Kevin Beets' story represents something bigger than just successful treasure hunting. It's proof that history isn't a closed book, that justice can be served decades after crimes were committed, and that individuals can make choices honoring victims of historical tragedies. Kevin's decision inspired similar acts of historical justice worldwide. Other treasure hunters discovering Nazi-looted wealth follow Kevin's example, working with Holocaust organizations and museums to ensure recovered items return to rightful owners or serve educational purposes. The investigation triggered by Kevin's discovery is leading to broader reforms in how governments handle historical crimes and stolen cultural treasures. Canada established a commission investigating Nazi collaboration during and after World War II. International organizations develop better protocols for handling recovered Nazi treasure. But most importantly, Kevin's story proves ordinary people can uncover extraordinary truths. The map leading to Paradise Hill sat in Wilhelm's cabin for decades, waiting for someone curious and brave enough to follow its clues. Kevin announced his intention to continue investigating other sites mentioned in the Nazi documentation. His success attracted funding from Holocaust memorial organizations and research institutions, allowing expanded investigations across North America. The Beets family operation evolved into something unprecedented: treasure hunting dedicated to recovering stolen artifacts and returning them to rightful owners. "This is what my family was meant to do," Kevin says, "not just finding gold, but finding truth. My grandfather spent his whole life carrying guilt about what he helped hide. Now we're spending our lives bringing it back to the light." Kevin's team has already uncovered 2 additional sites using documentation from Paradise Hill. Last month, they found another sealed tunnel system near Dawson City containing $50 million in stolen art and artifacts. 2 weeks ago, they discovered cached World War II documents in an abandoned mine shaft that's forcing historians to rewrite entire chapters about Nazi escape routes. Each discovery reveals more about the scope of Nazi operations in North America. The wealth concealment network was far more extensive than anyone imagined, involving coordination between Nazi officials, Canadian collaborators, and international financial institutions. But the discoveries also prove something else. The Earth remembers everything. Secrets buried for decades inevitably surface when someone has courage to dig deeper than official stories, persistence to follow cryptic clues, and principles to choose justice over profit. Advanced ground-penetrating technology is revealing anomalies at hundreds of sites across Canada and Alaska. Tunnel systems that don't appear on official maps. Mining claims abandoned without explanation. Areas where geology suggests massive deposits, but operations mysteriously ceased. Kevin's research team has identified over 200 locations where official records don't match physical evidence. Each site represents potential discoveries that could dwarf even the Paradise Hill find. "We've barely scratched the surface," Kevin explains. "Every answer leads to 10 more questions. Every map we find shows 3 more locations. The more we discover, the more we realize how much is still hidden out there." Kevin's success has sparked a technological revolution in historical treasure hunting. His team combines traditional prospecting methods with cutting-edge science in ways no one had attempted before. Artificial intelligence algorithms analyze historical documents, identifying patterns that human researchers might miss. Satellite imaging reveals subtle terrain variations that suggest underground structures. Drone surveys map potential sites with precision impossible just a few years ago. But the most powerful tool is Kevin's approach to historical research. Instead of accepting official records at face value, his team assumes discrepancies indicate deliberate concealment. Missing documentation becomes evidence of cover-ups. Inconsistent geological reports suggest hidden operations. This methodology has applications far beyond Nazi treasure hunting. The techniques Kevin developed are being used to investigate other historical mysteries: missing Spanish gold shipments, buried pirate treasures, hidden Civil War caches. Universities are studying Kevin's methods, developing new curricula that combine historical research with modern technology. The Paradise Hill Protocol is becoming standard procedure for investigators worldwide. Kevin's discovery has inspired a global movement of historical treasure hunters dedicated to recovering stolen artifacts and returning them to rightful owners. Teams in Australia, South Africa, and South America are applying Kevin's techniques to their own investigations. The economic impact extends far beyond treasure recovery. Communities around investigation sites experience renewed activity as researchers, journalists, and tourists arrive. Local businesses benefit from increased attention. Historical societies receive funding for preservation projects, but the most significant impact is educational. Each discovery forces re-examination of accepted historical narratives. Kevin's finds have revealed gaps in World War II history that academics are scrambling to address. High schools are incorporating Kevin's story into curricula, using it to teach students about critical thinking, historical research, and moral decision-making. His choice to return stolen treasure, rather than keeping it, provides powerful lessons about integrity and justice. Despite Kevin's remarkable discoveries, massive questions remain. The Paradise Hill documentation references other operations across North America, but many location codes remain undeciphered. Financial records suggest payments to collaborators in multiple countries, but most accounts were closed decades ago. Most intriguingly, Kevin found references to something called Operation Arctic Vault, apparently a massive Nazi treasure concealment project involving multiple sites across northern Canada and Alaska. But the documentation is incomplete, providing only fragments of what appears to have been an enormous conspiracy. Kevin's team is working with codebreakers and historical linguists to decipher encrypted Nazi communications found at Paradise Hill. Each breakthrough reveals new sites, new conspiracies, new evidence of crimes that powerful people thought they had successfully hidden. "We're not just treasure hunters anymore," Kevin explains. "We're historical detectives solving cold cases that are 80 years old. Every clue leads somewhere new, and every discovery makes us realize how much more is out there waiting." Kevin faces a race against time as witnesses from the World War II era pass away. Some of the Canadian officials implicated in the conspiracy are still alive, but in their 90s. Their memories, testimonies, and potentially hidden documents represent irreplaceable historical evidence. Kevin's team has interviewed dozens of elderly residents from mining communities, recording oral histories that provide crucial context for understanding Nazi operations in Canada. These conversations often reveal family secrets passed down through generations, whispered stories about mysterious strangers, unusual mining activities, and government officials who seem to have unexplained wealth. But time is running out. Each month that passes means losing potential witnesses who might hold keys to unsolved mysteries. Kevin's investigation has become not just a treasure hunt, but a preservation effort, racing to document historical truth before it disappears forever. Climate change adds another urgency factor. Permafrost that has preserved underground sites for decades is beginning to thaw, potentially damaging or destroying evidence before it can be recovered. Kevin's team prioritizes sites in areas experiencing rapid environmental change. Kevin has established the Beets Historical Justice Foundation, dedicated to continuing investigations into Nazi treasure operations and returning recovered artifacts to rightful owners. The foundation operates with funding from Kevin's discoveries, ensuring independence from government or corporate interests that might compromise investigations. The Foundation's mission extends beyond treasure hunting to education and remembrance. Mobile exhibits display recovered artifacts in communities across North America, telling stories of families whose treasures were stolen and eventually returned. School programs use Kevin's discoveries to teach students about Holocaust history and the importance of historical justice. But perhaps most importantly, the Foundation maintains detailed databases of recovered items, making it possible for families to identify and reclaim artifacts even decades after discovery. Advanced DNA analysis helps establish ownership of personal items when documentation is unavailable. Every recovered treasure tells a human story, Kevin explains. Our job isn't just finding gold, it's reconnecting people with pieces of their family history that they thought were lost forever. Kevin's Paradise Hill discovery has answered some questions while raising countless others. The scope of Nazi treasure operations in North America was far greater than anyone imagined, but Kevin's team has likely uncovered only a small fraction of what remains hidden. Recent discoveries suggest the treasure network extended beyond simple wealth concealment. Some sites appear to have been designed as operational bases for post-war Nazi activities. Others contain documentation suggesting plans for a Fourth Reich that would eventually reclaim hidden assets and resume Nazi operations. These finds have attracted attention from intelligence agencies worldwide, as some documents reference individuals and organizations that remained active long after the war ended. Kevin's discoveries are forcing governments to re-examine assumptions about how completely Nazi networks were dismantled after 1945. "We thought World War II ended in 1945, Kevin reflects, but what we're finding suggests some operations continued for decades. The full story of Nazi activities in North America is still being written." Based on documentation recovered from Paradise Hill and subsequent sites, Kevin's team estimates that hundreds of millions of dollars in Nazi treasure remains hidden across North America. The wealth concealment network was so extensive that Kevin believes they've identified less than 20% of potential sites. Advanced analysis of Nazi shipping records suggests treasure caches exist in remote locations across Canada, Alaska, and the northern United States. Some sites appear to have been designed as long-term storage facilities, while others were temporary hiding spots for treasure in transit to more secure locations. But the most tantalizing mystery involves references to a master vault, apparently a central repository where the most valuable treasures were concentrated. Nazi documents suggest this facility was larger and more secure than Paradise Hill, containing treasures worth potentially billions of dollars. Kevin's team has identified several candidate locations for the master vault, but accessing these sites requires specialized equipment and significant funding. Each investigation represents months of preparation and substantial financial risk. "The master vault is out there somewhere," Kevin insists. "Every document we find points to something bigger than anything we've discovered so far. When we find it, it's going to rewrite everything we thought we knew about Nazi operations in North America." Kevin Beets has proven that extraordinary discoveries are still possible for people willing to question official stories, follow cryptic clues, and dig deeper than conventional wisdom suggests. His success demonstrates that history's greatest secrets might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with curiosity, determination, and moral courage to uncover them. But Kevin's story raises questions that should keep everyone awake at night. If $350 million in Nazi gold could remain hidden beneath Canadian wilderness for 70 years, what else is out there? What other secrets are buried beneath ground we walk on every day? What other family documents contain clues to extraordinary discoveries? Kevin's research has identified abandoned mining sites, unexplained tunnel systems, and mysterious land purchases across North America where official records don't match physical evidence. Each location represents potential discoveries that could dwarf Paradise Hill. The tools for making these discoveries are available to anyone willing to use them. Ground-penetrating radar, historical archives, satellite imaging, and advanced research techniques are more accessible than ever before. What's needed is the curiosity to ask uncomfortable questions and the persistence to follow evidence wherever it leads. "The Earth remembers everything," Kevin says. "Secrets don't stay buried forever. They're waiting for someone brave enough to start digging, smart enough to piece together the clues, and principled enough to do the right thing when they find the truth." So here's the challenge. What abandoned sites in your area might be hiding extraordinary secrets? What family documents might contain clues to historical mysteries? What official stories might not tell the complete truth? Kevin Beets found his grandfather's map and followed it to one of the greatest treasure discoveries in history. The next great find might be waiting in an attic, a basement, or a forgotten corner of your own community. What will you do when you find your map? The adventure is just beginning. Every answer leads to bigger questions, Every discovery reveals how much more is waiting to be found. And somewhere out there, the next extraordinary secret is waiting for someone curious enough, brave enough, and determined enough to uncover it. What treasures are hiding beneath the ground you walk on every day? What secrets are your hometown keeping? What extraordinary discovery is waiting for you to make it happen? Kevin proved that ordinary people can uncover extraordinary truths. The question is, are you ready to start digging?